Ladies and gentlemen, we are often told no means no. That when a woman says no, a man has to back off. It's our right. It's what we believe. It's what we teach our daughters and also our sons. But do married women enjoy this right? Under Indian law, they don't. They don't because under law, rape within marriage is not rape. The law that criminalizes rape makes an exception for sexual acts in a marriage. Why? Well, the law does not answer that question. The judiciary is split on the issue, and the debate on marital rape has therefore gone on for years and years in this country. Today, ladies and gentlemen, the government of India has made its stand clear in an affidavit filed in the Supreme Court. It has fiercely defended the marital rape exception before the Supreme Court, arguing, and this is the crux of their argument, that applying stringent penal provisions of rape within a marriage would be, quote-unquote, excessively harsh and could have serious socio-legal implications on the institution of marriage. Now, the government has acknowledged that while a husband has no fundamental right to violate his wife's consent, they are also saying that invoking the full force of the law as applied to rape cases involving strangers could destabilize the matrimonial framework. Essentially saying that if marital rape is criminalized in India, then the institution of marriage will be destabilized. How is my question? We'll have that question answered by my guest this evening. Now, the Ministry of Home, which filed the affidavit, has also argued that if marital rape is criminalized, it could be the subject of much misuse. It could be weaponized to harass a husband and destabilize marriages. I see the point there. We know that the dowry law has been misused for harassing a man and his family. So the government has a point there. Then, the government in its affidavit has also urged the Supreme Court to respect Parliament's decision that chose not to criminalize marital rape post the Nirbhaya horror. It has said that the regulation of marital relationships fall within the legislative domain, which they say is better equipped to address societal complexities. In simple words, they are essentially telling the Supreme Court that marriages are our businesses, they are not your businesses. So essentially, stay off it. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2022, the Delhi High Court had delivered a split verdict on whether marital rape should be criminalized in India or not. The court's split views were a reflection of how the subject has split India's citizens down the middle on what is a very sensitive issue. A constitution bench of the Supreme Court is now hearing the matter, and it has to answer two questions, fundamental questions. First, can the state, can the government compel a woman to have sexual intercourse with her husband? And second, what is the role of the judiciary to protect the constitutional rights of a woman under Article 14 and under Article 21 on the Constitution? As I said, views are split down the middle on this issue. We have all views on the show this evening. Welcoming my guests, Pinky Anand is a former ASG joining us on the broadcast. She's saying the government is absolutely right. Dr. Vikram Singh is a former DGP of Uttar Pradesh. Let's see what he says. Tahira Hassan is a women's rights activist. She wants to know why the government is defending an archaic law. Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj is an activist. She's a documentary filmmaker as well. Deepika says if marital rape is criminalized, the law will be misused. We also have Rekha Agarwal, who's joining us on the broadcast. She's opposing the government's affidavit. I'm first going to get the two lawyers in with your permission. Pinky Anand, can I ask you, isn't it a bit odd that in India, if a husband beats up his wife, he can be jailed, But if he rapes his wife, it's okay, he's not a criminal. Why will the government support such an oddity, such an injustice which strips a woman of her bodily autonomy and her dignity?
So Shreya, firstly, let me clarify. I don't think you're right in the position that I am taking on the proposition. Secondly, ultimately,
Acha.
I'll be very fair here, but it has taken up a lot of our time to come to a discourse on what should be done and when it should be done. And I speak in the context of women autonomy and the fact that cruelty, rape are offenses, they are offenses. Whether you're married or not married is not the material difference that should be made in the matter. I do, however, I do understand. I don't understand the government's position on this because for a long time, and we've been taking this position as far as society is concerned, that anything which will destabilize marriage is something that should be not dealt with possibly by the anybody but the legislature. So the court should step into it. But we've gone way beyond it. Whether it was triple talaq, whether it was adultery, and incidentally, I did appear in the adultery matter, and I did try to uphold the law on adultery as a criminal offense, but ultimately it was turned down by the Constitution bench. So, as I said, I understand where the government goes, and I understand where the society goes, because society has its own issues to take up. But as far as the constitutional courts are concerned, whether it is surrogacy is an issue that is also coming up before the constitutional court. Whether it has been adultery, where the court struck down the criminal offence, saying it doesn't matter, this whole thing is archaic and cannot stand. Whether it is a judgment striking down the exception of marital rape over 15 years of age, which my Lord Justice Lokur had in his independent judgment struck down and said it is contrary. So rape is rape, and to say as an answer that you have criminal statutes available like 498A and 406 and the likes to prosecute men for cruelty is good enough. I'm afraid it is not. We've come into a time where we have to deal with it. Holding off possibly was okay for some time because you wanted to take this forward, but the reality of the day-to-day is that you need recourse to the remedies that are available in law for this.
Pinky, you have said that you understand to a certain extent where the government is coming from, right? That's what you have said. Now, please help me understand where the government is coming from. The government says if we criminalize marital rape, it will stress the institution of marriage. It will destabilize the institution of marriage. Bhai, in a marriage where a husband is raping a wife every night, that marriage is already destabilized. That marriage is already under stress.
You're
so
right.
What is the government even defending here?
I'm not sitting here only to defend the government, Shreya. I'm on a proposition where I want to uphold human dignity as the first and foremost issue, and women's dignity and honor is again something that I stand for. So the question of which position one takes, I am not right now in the matter. So when we do it, we will do it. But the position remains that I do understand, I say why. Because, for example, when we had done the adultery matter and the government was defending the position that it should continue to be a criminal offense, and if it is not a criminal offense, it will destabilize marriage. The whole perception of the Indian society, incidentally, has been, and we can't challenge that, to say that this was a perception that anything that allows a third party domain into marriage would ultimately mean that it would come into a public sphere. That is a basic argument always of social change. But I am not defending that position as of date. That has happened, that chapter has been there, it's withstood its time, but we found various other issues now. As you said, for example, the harassment cause on anti-dowry laws. Now, it is a fact, it is misutilized to an extent. Let's face it, nobody can contest that, but we've been the biggest ardent supporter of that to say, no, but you need to have it because it must put on the message down. What does society or the constitutional court do? You set down a pattern for how the society is supposed to behave itself. What are the values that are supposed to be ingrained in a society? And as far as the constitutional courts are concerned, it's clear. If something is contrary to the right of life or the right of discrimination, it has to be struck down. That's why Justice Lokur in his judgment, when that was challenged the exception, ultimately set it down. So we have a development of an era where today it is difficult to sustain this concept of society and the values that have been put. It's been held up long enough. Women's autonomy as an issue, and gradually, of course, inroads have been made. We do need to put it down. Whatever the effect of it is, it will have to be seen. Sometimes it may be negative, granted. Because I'll tell you why. Shreya, 1 minute. If you don't, on the argument that the government is making, though I'm not supporting it, I say so, but the argument that is made is, If you have a legal recourse, you will take a legal recourse. If you don't have a legal recourse, you may not ultimately go for something. That I guess is a broad argument that is being taken, but it can't sustain in the face of the reality check today. And women's autonomy cannot take any more obstacles in its way to say, no, you can't do it because you will go to court. Well, if you have to go to court, you'll go to court. And if you have to go for prosecution, you'll go for prosecution. If the person is going to be jailed, he's going to be jailed. And if it doesn't go, he won't go.
Okay. Okay, so let me get the other lawyer into the debate before I get the others. Rekha Agarwal, you're also an advocate in the Supreme Court. I want to ask you, essentially what Pinky to me, this is what I understand of it. Pinky is saying, look, times change and laws have to change with time. I get that. Why is the government refusing to move with the times? Because that is very clear in the affidavit they have filed in the Supreme Court. Yes, I agree there is it has the potential to be misused. I agree with that because we've seen the dowry law being misused. But that cannot be an argument for not bringing in a law which will protect women within a marriage.
Shreya, I would like to draw your attention to Article 15 of the Constitution. While Article 14 guarantees equality to men and women, but Article 15, on the other hand, has been specifically included in the Constitution to ensure that women and children, particularly who are the marginalized sections of a society, their status is brought up to a higher level, and they do not face any kind of discrimination on account of their of a gender bias. So, having said that, I really do not see that as to why the center has given this affidavit and given I would rather say it's a very meek and a weak excuse, to say that this is going to destabilize the institution of marriage. I do agree that, laws, which are made in this manner, beneficial pieces of legislation, whether it was 498, the so-called dowry, prohibition law. Then we had, the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2013, and then we have also got laws like the POSH Act, Protection of Women from Sexual Harassment at Workplace. We have another law which is called the POXO Act, which is in fact the only gender-neutral law, which is there to protect children from being sexually exploited. Here we also have cases where wives are using POXO, to target their husbands and bring them to their knees by alleging that they've been sexually violating their own children. So what I would say is over here that I heard Ms. Pinky Anand very seriously, and I fully agree with whatever she has said to a great extent. But I really appreciate her submission that you have to change with the times. And now in our country, where the internet, the social media, everything, we come a long way, as they say, we come a long way, baby, So now I think it's high time that the center does not take up this standard. After all, what institution of marriage are we protecting in any case? Look at the number of cases which are there flooding all the courts, the family courts. You've got 100 cases a day. Every case doesn't, they're not more than 3 or 4 hearings, maximum 5 hearings of any matrimonial case in a family court. So I would say that on one hand, you are moving forward. You're talking of progress. This argument that this is going to destabilize marriages, I think that is a very regressive argument. And I think the center...
It doesn't hold for me either. Better. It doesn't hold for me. It's a logic I've not understood either. Yes, Rekha ji, I'm going to get in a contrarian view as well. Let me get in Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj, because there is another point of view to this debate. And there are many people in this country who agree with what the government is saying and doing. Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj, the question to you is simple. Rape is rape, right? Whether it's within the institution of marriage, whether it is outside the institution of marriage. Then can the argument that a law that criminalizes marital rape will be misused and therefore it should not be enforced or brought into this country? Most first world countries have criminalized marital rape, right? And you can't get away by saying कि वो तो शादी को वैसे भी seriously नहीं लेते. हम लोगों के लिए sacred institution है, इसलिए हम लोगों के मापदंड ही अलग हैं.
Shreya, first of all, most civilized, most first world countries do not have a system as India has, where one can just go and file a case alleging that rape happened 10 years ago and the police completely flunks into action, arrests the man without doing any preliminary inquiry. But it happens in India. Now, I want to begin by saying, Shreya, that while dignity and honor of women is important, the dignity of and honor of men cannot be just done away with in zest of justice. There are enormous cases where the laws have been misused. After the protection of Supreme Court against immediate arrest in 498A, we have seen in marital disputes now father-in-laws are being falsely implicated of rape, brother-in-law is falsely implicated of rape. There is 377 unnatural sex which started tagging along with 498A to ensure that the husband is arrested. When we have had instances like this, and if I may also share with you, Shreya, last month we have released a report where in 2023, 306 husbands were murdered by their wives because of an extramarital affair or adultery. Now, when women in marital relationship have gone to the extent of murdering their husband, what will stop them from filing a marital rape case, getting the husband immediately arrested, getting him out of the way completely, and then having, whatever she wants to do? So we have, while developed as a country to recognize women's rights, let's understand that there are a lot of women who are abusing their rights, who have the same criminal mindset as men do. And let us please also acknowledge, Shreya, that while we are talking about equality, none of the laws that protect people in marital relationship, whether domestic violence or 498A or any other gender specific laws, even sees men as victims. So while we are arguing about equality, let's talk about whether we truly have gender equality here in India.
Tahira Hassan, please respond to that.
You're asking to me?
Yes, Tahira, go ahead,
Hello?
please.
Should I come in?
Yes, Tahira ji, please go ahead. I want you to respond to what Deepika is saying.
You're asking
Yes,
me?
you're asking to me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard every word.
Yeah, just a minute, Rekha ji, it's not for you. It's for Tahira. It's for Tahira ji. Tahira ji, please respond.
Yes. I'm saying that when she's talking, the earlier panelists, that women are murdering their husband or murdered so many, some figures she has given. I'm saying, what about the wives who have been murdered by the husband? What is logic behind it? And my other question is that don't you think that women has some dignity? And we have article like 15 and 21. According to that, the right to life and dignity. What about this? The man can use woman as a commodity. I mean, he can force her to go into intercourse, sexual intercourse without her consent. This is called marital rape. When she's not willing, she's a human being. Suppose some health problem or she's not willing, she says no. So she can't say no. This is called marital rape. And the marital rape is deemed to a form of domestic violence and sexual violence. That should be taken in that way also.
Okay.
And when after Nirbhaya, when the Justice Verma Committee was constituted, Justice Verma suggested, you see in that law, he suggested to criminalize this marital rape. But government that time did not pay any attention to it. So I think this is to treat the women as human being, that she can say no also. She has every right. It's not a fundamental right of the husband to force her to go into sexual act.
Okay. My question also is, why should consent be presupposed just because you're married? That consent hasn't been given for life just because you're married. That's the point. But Dr. Vikram Singh, I want to know from you what your views are and whether you agree that the law has the potential to be misused. क्योंकि potential to be misused तो POCSO का भी है. Potential to be misused तो Dowry Act का भी था.
Good evening, Shreya, and very esteemed and learned panelists. Thank you so much for making me a part of your wonderful show and to be a part of just an only ladies panel. Well, I'm extremely honored to be a part of this August panel. Thank you very much. There are two aspects to this situation. Number one, the legal safeguards to a lady. The legal safeguards are very much there. Just because a lady is married does not mean that she has become a second-rate citizen. To the contrary, the grammar, the syntax, and the Latin say bride-groom, and the groom means and translates into das, anuchar, sevak, kinkar. That is the synonyms of a servant. Anuchar, sevak, kinkar. That is the actual status of the bridegroom or the husband. That is of literature. Coming to law, Article 14, Article 20, as Tahira ji has mentioned, 498A, the Dowry Act, as also the exception 2 of Section 375 of the IPC now becomes BNS Section 63, would say that there is an exception, but to the contrary, a verbal abuse, mental torture, even to the extent of murder, all sections apply to any domestic violence, and we have the Domestic Violence Act. Therefore, in any case of violation of rights of the lady or the married lady, there can be no question that the husband can get scot-free merely because he happens to be the husband. There is no entitlement, and obviously the husband will face consequences. Now, coming to your point of misuse, misuse is that, yes, the Dowry Act was misused, the Domestic Violence Act has been, but any act is liable to be misused. It is for the maturity of the couple and also the impartiality of the investigating agency. My only single point is, to what extent would we permit any agency, that would include the judiciary, to calibrate the conjugal rights of the couple? To calibrate the conjugal rights. Marriage is for adults, marriage is for mature people, marriage is for people where the bodies may be two, but the soul is one. There is unity of soul, and it presupposes a basic degree of maturity that there would be understanding. If there is no understanding, well, there is a liberty of parting their ways also. But to allow any institution, that would include the judiciary or even the police, to enter the sacred space of a domestic house, I have my own reservations. I would say that there are enough safeguards to ensure the dignity and safety of every married woman.
Okay. Okay, so essentially your argument is that if there is a Domestic Violence Act to protect women, why do you need to criminalize marital rape? But here's the question. Here's the question. Marpetai, till it's marpetai, the husband can go to jail, but the woman can't go to the police and say, I am being raped within my marriage, because the whole question of constitutionality will come in. And the police can show the woman the law book and say, well, it's not a crime under the law. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, the debate is one where everyone has a view. The country is split down the middle. It seems the judiciary is split down the middle, but the government has made up its mind and is saying a big no to criminalizing marital rape. The debate will go on. It's gone on for many years in this country. Thank you very much to all our guests for joining us this evening. Pinky Anand, Dr. Vikram Singh, Tahira Hassan, Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj, and Rekha Agarwal. Good to have all of you on the show and get your views.